Well, hi everyone. So glad to see you this week. I know it's Thursday, June 25th, and I usually try to get these out on a Monday, but I have had one technical difficulty after another this week. And so here I am on Thursday, and I was there on Tuesday and Wednesday, and all the kinds of things trying to get this done. I don't know if it's the subject matter or what, but it has been hard getting this out this week. But I do have some things to say about the destruction of the statues of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. What I want to do is to make sure that, in particular, young people know and understand who these men were. So sometimes it's so easy to get into a mob and be upset because someone tells you about several of the negative things about these guys. And you think, well, I just want nothing to do with them. But both of these men were very important when it comes to the democracy that you live in today. And so there's a reason why I'm doing this. I want you to know who they were and to rethink it before you go and destroy property. Um, and plus, we always want law and order. Things should be done decently and with respect. So things should go through the court. They shouldn't just be done with a mob. Because next time, see, there might be a mob tearing down something that you would not like for them to tear down. So that's why we have law and order, okay? And yes, I know that there are some issues with the policemen. You may be looking at me and thinking, well, she's old, she doesn't understand. Actually, my age lets me understand a little bit more. I have had negative experiences with policemen from when I was a child in the 60s and on even into the 21st century as I moved into my middle ages. So I do know that there are issues, and I have cried many tears the last few weeks over the things that have happened and prayed for the families. So I am not one of these people who are just totally unsympathetic and are in denial. And I also want you to know, though, that I still support our police. It's the police, if they were not here, people would be able to just walk into our house, do whatever they want. But they don't because of the fear they have of the police. However, we do need some reforms. This is true. But we still need our police, and we need to understand that most police don't do this, and so they need to be appreciated. But the ones who have these issues and the ones that they're finding out who are doing these terrible things, many of them already had records of brutality, and they probably should have been fired long ago. So we desperately need reforms so that the police will protect our citizens and not harm them. Okay. So I want to get all that clear before I get started. And so first we're going to talk about George Washington. Yes, got my glasses on because I'm going to, make a few notes here. Um, so Washington, this is, he did several things that were so important to you today. See, that's the kind of history I teach. I teach history that's going to be significant to you today. We know that Washington was the one who led the Continental Army, okay? And so the Continental Army, they defeated the most powerful army in the world at the time, the British Army, and won the independence of the United States, okay? So this was so wonderful. He was such a wonderful leader that some of the leaders of the time actually wanted George Washington to become king. However, Washington, and of course others, was like, no, 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 we are going to have a democratic republic. But if he had had a lot of ego, he would have had enough support to cause maybe a little mini civil war there and become the dictator of the United States or the king of the United States, and we'd be dealing with his descendants and I know he didn't have any physical descendants, but you know what I mean, with his relatives and things like that being in control. Instead, he kept it as a democratic republic, and that is one of the reasons why we still have a democratic republic, that you can vote in and out people, that you can protest. He believed in freedom of speech, freedom of the press, some wonderful things that you enjoy today that George Washington really had a lot to do with. Something else about Washington that was really good was He did not believe in the Indian Removal Act. We say Native American now, but some wanted the Native Americans because, United States started out east and they wanted all of them moved west, just get out of the way and all that, take their land. And George Washington was actually against that. Unfortunately, a few presidents later, Andrew Jackson, he would come and preside over the Indian Removal Act, as it was called, and as it was called by the Native Americans, the Trail of Tears, because thousands died. That is a whole nother story for another day. But Washington did not believe in that. Another thing about Washington, he established anti Semitism, that anti Semitism would not be uh, welcome in the United States. He actually wrote to all the Jewish communities, and you can read the letter today, just Google it, and you'll find it. And he welcomed them to the United States. Now, this may seem like, well, of course, the Jews aren't persecuted in the United States. But this was something he really firmly established because for centuries on and off, the Jews were persecuted throughout Europe. So this was a very important thing that he did, and he was very well aware of it. So now we have to deal with the fact that George Washington owned slaves. His wife owned slaves, other relatives owned slaves, and all that. That's not good. I totally admit that. But my age does serve me well for this little point. When I was a kid, it was still important when people died, what they did before they died and what they said before they died. Sometimes what they did or said before they died was a way of making up for the ills of their life, something that they wanted to make right. And before he died, George Washington, not before he died, excuse me, but upon his death, George Washington's slaves were freed. Yes, they were freed. So we may say, I don't care because he should have freed them while he was alive. However, what you're doing is you're bringing a 21st century mindset into the 1700s. It doesn't work. You have to understand that what he did was very powerful for that time because he made a statement at his death that the slaves should be freed. This statement, unfortunately, was not heard by many, and especially in the South. Many of the northern states did get rid of slavery. A lot of people don't know that, but slavery was all over the country. It was in the north as well as the south. But the north, they really started just getting rid of slavery and everything, but the South held on to it. In his farewell address, Washington wanted unity in the country, but I believe he knew that these things would separate the country. And certainly about 62 years after his death, there was a civil war. And there were many reasons for the Civil War, but we all know that the main reason for the Civil War was slavery. And so enter Abraham Lincoln. Now, some people have a problem with Lincoln because while he was campaigning and debating and everything, he made some racist statements. I'm not going to deny it, he did. But even years before Lincoln became president, he tried to pass legislation that was anti-slavery. They started the Republican Party. One of the main reasons for the beginning of the Republican Party was to combat slavery from increasing, because as the country kept growing, this became a big conflict. We'll get into that when we talk about the Missouri Compromise and all kinds of terrible things that happened. The Dred Scott cases. There's so much that we need to talk about so that you can understand how we got where we got today. But nonetheless, Lincoln and the Republicans did not want slavery increasing in any of the new states. And this was one of their main goals. So when Lincoln became president, the Southerners knew where he stood. I mean, no matter what statements he made, he didn't fool them. They knew he loathed slavery and that he was going to do everything he could to get rid of it. And it wasn't long after he became president that they started seceding from the Union. And before long, the southern states were gone from the Union, and the Civil War, 1861, would start. So Lincoln, of course, had much to do with you have the Emancipation Proclamation. You have him pushing and working hard to get anti-slavery legislation, all these kind of things, and eventually, of course, winning the war, leading America through the Civil War. I'm leaving so much out, but Lincoln, in his determination to rid the country of slavery, knew that his life would probably be in danger. He knew those people would kill over it. That's what I mean, they were fighting a war. We had, I think, about 620,000 that we lost in the Civil War. That was a significant amount of the population of the United States at the time. So this was a terrible, brutal war. And he presided over it, and he did not give up until the slaves were free. So despite the fact that he made some racist comments and was not a perfect man. Neither one of these men, George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, were perfect. So both of them, however, have a lot to do with where we stand today. Despite the fact that you can say, um, well, African Americans are still not free, but we are not bound. We're not in slavery. I mean, my goodness, I have a passport. I can leave the country. I've gone to Asia. I can go to the different states, of course, with COVID-19 right now. Most of us are not going too far. But I work, I get my check. This is nothing like slavery. There's still racism. However, it is not slavery. So we really need to make a difference here. I mean, many of us, I live in a lovely place. I don't live in a shack. Have you been down south and seen some of those terrible places where my ancestors had to live? I mean, they were terrible places, shacks that the slaves lived in. So I mean, it was a terrible life. Many of them never left the plantation their entire life. They lived on just that plantation. They never got to do anything that they wanted to do, and they never got paid. That was slavery, beaten, raped, and spoken to in terrible ways. And so our lives are different. We have so many more choices. However, these things, as you can look back at the things I've taught about social Darwinism and things like that, these things have persisted. So we have definitely fought much prejudice, much racism, and things throughout the years, and we're still fighting that. So I'm not in denial about any of that. But what I am saying is that we don't want to look back at history and just look at the negativity of different individuals. We need to look at the whole person. George Washington and Abraham Lincoln were very important, and we are enjoying the fruit of their labor that they just labored so hard for as great leaders to bring forth this great United States of America. I don't know about you, but I love going to any country I can. I love to travel and everything, and I hope before I leave this life that I get to go everywhere. But I love the United States. This is home. I'm sure eventually I'll be like some people and have dual citizenship in one of the African countries because I am an African American. I'm very proud of that. But I am very proud of all the things that my people did to make this country great because we had as much of a great part of building this country as anyone has. And so before you go and be a part of a mob tearing things down, think about what Chesterton said. Don't tear down a fence before you know why it's up there. Okay? I mean, that's not verbatim, but he said something like that. And I think G.K. Chesterton, I think his name was. And, and it's so important to think about that. So when you go tearing things down and you go be a part of a mob, what are you really doing? We need law and order. And something I want to tell you before I leave, and especially you young people, I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to dig a little deeper. There's a lot of good information online. Look for sites that have citations. They tell you the books they got it from. That's your citation. Also, there's Google Scholar. That's something really good to look into. There are ways to find good information online. Go to the library and talk to the librarian. Librarians are great finding good information for you. Don't just believe what someone says on TV or what they say online. Not even me. As I'm reiterating, find out for yourself what these people were about and how important and who was important in history. Okay? And even though there are some statues that I want to see brought down, I still want to do it through the court system. I still want law and order and not a mob, okay? There's a lot to say about this, but I hope that I can just kind of get you to, really look into this a little bit more. Okay, I know I've gone way over my time. I'm so glad you tuned in today, and I hope you tune in next week. I hope to get this out on Monday. And hey, you have a terrific rest of the week, and I can actually say weekend because tomorrow is Friday. So, take care, stay safe, wear your mask in public. That really helps. That takes away like 75% of the germs, and that really helps. So, we're going to get through this whole COVID thing. We're going to get through what we're going through even today with the racism. America is better, and it's going to get better yet, okay? Hey, I'm going to hush, okay? Hey, love you. God bless. Bye-bye.